Ready? Okay, I call this meeting to order at 6:33 tonight. Sorry, there's been some technical difficulties. We're ready to go now. To begin by just saying, reading pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Reading School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending tonight. We will begin, as always, with public input. If anybody has anything they'd like to be heard on that is not on the agenda tonight, please either type a comment or unmute. Hearing none, we will move on to the student report. We are honored to have Paris McCullough here, class of 2023. Paris, do you want to unmute and give us the student report?
Yes, hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. To start off with academics, I know sophomore course selection just finished, picked out all my classes, and freshman has begun. The term ends beginning of April, which is always exciting. And then the civil action project for both juniors and seniors is going to be due at the beginning of May. I also just got the email for the PE requirement, so you don't actually have to take the course. You can just complete the hours, which is definitely something that I know a lot of students opt for, so that's exciting. And then you have a lot of testing coming up and registration dates, like the SATs, April 13th. AP testing you can start registering for next week, as well as the Seal by Literacy will be testing March 31st and April 1st. Also Mcas, which is going to be in May, which I know has caused quite the controversy, especially with juniors, because they're going to have to take their English and math, which they didn't get to do last year. And I know they're kind of frustrated with that. I didn't have to take the biology last year, but we don't have to make that up. So I'm grateful because I'm not sure how well I would have done on that. For athletics, football can now practice outside and their records 1-1. Same with volleyball, they have been practicing, and they actually have a game right now. Their record's 1-4. For clubs, the team has started like a volunteer project with Andover. UNIRAC just finished their Hero Squad, which was formerly Patients with Ponies, for fundraising, and it went phenomenal, very, very successful. Student Council today and Thursday for Cohort B are holding a mismatched sock day for, World Autism Day, which is awesome. Same with, they just finished fundraising for the Special Olympics in Massachusetts and raised a little over $500, which is incredible. Same with next week, Student Council is doing a March shootout, like a modified version of March Madness, which is nice because it's kind of the first event and people are ready to go back. And then obviously the whole reopening thing that's going to happen. There's a lot of emotions towards that. From what I know, students are very, very excited, especially because testing is going to be like back to back to back, which is causing nerves. But if you're in school to prepare for that, I know it definitely eases the mind a little bit. So I think you'll just find like an increase in student health, especially with the weather getting nicer. I just got back from the park with my friend, and it was just so nice to be outside. So I think you'll find mental health in students going increasingly up, especially when you can see your friends that you haven't seen in a year. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paris. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Paris? Excellent report. Yeah, I don't think there's I think there's a lot of excitement around, and so we'll kind of get the update now. So thank you, Paris. You are welcome to stay on as long as you'd like. If you have things you have to do, don't feel afraid to sign off if you'd like as well.
I'm going to head out. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you. So just for everybody on the call, we'll start, since I think there's some people here wanting to hear about the update for the return to in-person. And we'll do that, then we'll hear from the middle school, and then we'll go to the solar and energy update. So Dr. Daly, do you want to start us with the return to in-person plan?
Great. So I will share just a couple updates about school for this fall. I'm sorry, for this spring. We at the high school, we are discussing a few things just to be clear about graduation. There's lots of conversations going on with Mr. LaPrette, and the class advisors and the student leadership are very involved, talking about some various activities. We just got graduation guidance from the state, and so we are fairly confident that we'll be able to deliver something very similar to last year without any hitch or problem, which is wonderful. He's working with the North Reading Police Department, and I've contacted our working group that we had last year to see whether there are any additional safety concerns for this year. But certainly they're talking about some kind of block party, senior sunrise, outdoor ceremonies for graduation, and so there's a lot of good things happening there. They are also having a discussion, if you recall from the fall, we talked about modifications to exams throughout the year, and as mentioned by Paris, there's, Mcas exams are still on the horizon, along with AP exams, and Mr. LaPrette is working with his team to determine how final exams would look for this year. And the recommendation that I believe we're going to see is that we wouldn't have final exams at the high school in the traditional sense, similar to last year where we reconfigured what that looked like. Final exams are typically, they're cumulative and they're a large portion of the year grade. And so we think that given all the unique learning circumstances this year, that's not the best model to have. And so similar to what we've seen, what we saw last spring, it's not exactly the same as last year, but there was a change last year. That's what's similar. The recommendation would be to have the focus be on the quarterly grade, and there would be there would still be summative assessments or assessments at the end of the year, but it would not be that final exam period. So I just wanted to share that with you. Mr. LaPrette would be happy to come and speak if you need him to, but I did have a sort of a memo from him that I shared with you in your materials as well. I don't know if there's any questions about that I could answer.
I think the last time I think we did a motion to approve for the changing of the midterm exams, didn't we? I don't know if we approved it or if you just ran it by us.
I seem to remember voting on it.
Yeah, I think it's more of it's a high school decision. I don't feel like I would even be giving more than advice on it, but I mean, I think it's fine to, if you want to.
I just can't remember what we did.
Officially, yeah.
Question.
Yes.
So just on this, so will that time be replaced with just full-time learning on the normal schedule?
It would be. Yeah, it would be. That's my understanding, is that the days would be learning days and they would have assessments, but yeah, you wouldn't have the final exam schedule or the exams. That's my understanding.
I mean, I support whatever the teachers and educators think is the right way to do it. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I would not interject my opinion over those that actually do this for a living. So if that's what the recommendation is, I fully support it. My only question would be, I actually received an email earlier today from a student asking about MCAS, and I know that we don't have the authority to not take an MCAS, but I'm just curious if there's been any update on the state level and when they will happen, any changes upcoming about that. And specific question was, if somebody's in a remote in cohort D,
Yeah.
how will they be taking the MCAS?
Sure. So it's not 100% clear yet to me on that last question. I think that there will be a recommendation that those students come into school and take the exam in a secure location within that school, at their home school. Whether they would still do that, I'm not sure. And whether, even when students are in a typical year when they're out for a medical reason, that's usually what's recommended, is that they come into school and take the exam. So I think that would still be the guidance, but that is something that we are awaiting some additional clarification. I do have a conference tomorrow that may be one of the things that is presented. They have changed the middle school and the elementary dates, but they haven't yet changed or mentioned any modifications to the high school. And so one of the things that has come out of the subgroup that's working on some bargaining with the teachers union, one of the points that I I guess I'll just present it now, is that I will advocate here with this group that we, I think MCAS is something, as we always say, it gives us important information, but it's not the end-all be-all. It gives us one data point on a few days in the year. It is not representative of everything, but I think it also, what I've heard from our administrators is that they're ready to do this. There is a reduced schedule this year, which we already think is helpful. I would actually advocate for, if it works for this year, maybe we keep that reduced schedule moving forward because it's down the number of days that we're requiring on testing. Does it give us important information, especially in the lower grades, where it's a yearly test, grades 3 through 8, to see where students are against benchmarks and curriculum for that grade level at that year? I think it does give us information. Where we really need to push the state, I think, is about how it's used to rank and sort schools against schools, districts against district. They're saying it's not going to be used in that way, but they are still going to go public and report it. And I think that's something that is unfortunate. And I know that the Massachusetts School Superintendents Association took a position on this, and I would largely support that position as well that I've shared. So I don't see, my recommendation would not be that we don't do the MCAS this year, but I think, honestly, I think we're all feeling that, our main goal is getting back, being in person. We do not want to be inundated with testing. But there's other pieces. I've heard both sides of it about students that, don't want to be denied the opportunity for the Adams Scholarship and whatnot. So I think those juniors that Paris was mentioning that didn't take the test in the spring are set to take it in a few weeks. And they would have those opportunities moving forward with that test. So that's the position on MCAS that I said I would bring forward.
And I mean, to that point, if the state's requiring it, I mean, our options are limited on some of, like you're saying, we should push the state, we should advocate for different things, but much of this is also mandated to the schools, correct?
It is. It is. Yep.
Just in case people are listening, I want to make sure that everyone's clear on what we can decide and what we can't decide.
Yeah, we can't decide not to take it, but we can, take votes, write letters, sign petitions, and the like. I think advocacy is supported, but we are, we're a high-achieving district, we're a blue ribbon district, and I think this data has helped us over the years to help see where we are, and I think that's what I've heard. And for the amount of work, honestly, the schools have already been getting their MCAS materials ready, and we've already done all that work as well, because we're prepared for it. So at this late hour, I'd be surprised if they completely canceled it, but it could happen. Mr. Johnson is on the call as well. We just wanted to provide an update on the winter sports, and then I'll get right into the next part. Mr. Johnson, are you here?
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. A little bit about the fall 2 season, something very new to all of us going into this year, called the wedge season. And it started, pretty much when we got back from February break and goes to the Saturday of April vacation. And includes volleyball, football, cheerleading, and boys and girls indoor track, which is technically going to be run outside. And all those sports right now, numbers-wise, are pretty good. They're pretty similar to what we would have done in a normal year. So I think our participation, I guess even with our enrollment down a little bit, our participation is pretty good. We have 27 volleyball players, 46 football players, 15 cheerleaders, and about 35 on each one of the track teams. So it's actually pretty good, and it's really exciting to see the kids practicing. So far today, we had a JV football game that just ended a little while ago, and allowing the fans in there or the parents in kind of gives it a little bit more of a normal feeling. And even just some of the kids that are practicing around them, it's starting to get back to where I'm hoping it kind of builds up into the springtime. I think all the teams will have a little bit of success. What we're going to do with volleyball is a lot like we did with basketball. There's going to be a Cape Ann League tournament at the end of the regular season with all 8 teams. Football plays 7 games, all in the Cape Ann League, and we'll just play down to as best the league title as we can. And cheerleading is going to be, we're the only team in the Cape Ann League that is currently doing cheerleading this season. Most of them opted for the spring because the word was that they were going to have possible competitions in the spring. So that kind of drives cheering a little bit. What we are going to have for cheerleaders in this fall 2 season is a virtual competition. We'll be joining the NEC and competing with them. So they were working really hard today. We talked to them a little bit about it, and they're very excited to have some type of competition. And then these same girls will probably be doing the when we have our real spring season and the spring competition. Currently track scrimmages Linfield this Thursday, and then they have 4 meets, and that'll finish up with a Cape Ann League meet. Don't know what that's going to be, whether that's going to be limited participation of maybe just the top athletes in each one of the events, or a virtual or something of that nature. The one piece of this that hasn't chimed in with track, both in the wedge season and in the spring season coming up, is what the MI is going to do for state meets, or the MSTCA, who seem to kind of takes over a lot of those relays and things like that we've been very successful in. So, and good news, volleyball beat Pentucket today 3-0. So, and the JV football team beat Ipswich today. So the kids are competing hard, the staff is working hard, and there's a lot of excitement in the department.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any comments or questions? My only question, Mr. Johnson, is why was the decision made to have cheerleading in the fall if all the other schools are doing it in the spring? Just curious.
Well, there's an option for both of them. This is one where they do, our cheerleaders are cheering for the football team. And if you were at the Manchester-Essex game, you saw they had cheerleaders as well. Theirs is run a little bit differently, though. It's more of a, it's almost run through their recreation department. It's not part of their high school, but we did have them, they do cheer for the team. So it was just something that there was interest in our girls to have it this season. And I think there are probably, I think there's about 5 teams in the Northeast Conference that are cheering as well. So they will have a real competition as part of this as well.
And can you speak a little bit about the spectators? About what our policy is for the different sports right now?
Right, and this has been kind of nice. We started with the Manchester Essex football game, and I know there was a big kind of writing campaign by a lot of the parents in the Cape Ann League, and this is true. Dr. Dale and I were talking, I think the morning before this even happened, about we have a nice facility. We have an ability for teams the parking is spread out, the entrance into the facility is spread out. We have plenty of bleachers. So we did allow Manchester Essex parents and the North Reading parents to come in for both the football team and the cheerleaders, and that's worked out well. We did open it up with volleyball last Friday to allow the parents of the home team to come to the game, and that's been pretty consistent with the Cape Ann League. In the gym, still they don't want visiting parents, but most people are accepting the home parents for that. I have to say, probably, I thought our crowd was good, and at the Manchester Essex, it was a big crowd. I went to the Ipswich game this past Saturday there, and they had a very small crowd. I think we had more North Reading people there than they had. So, every once in a while you have to go around, tell someone to put their mask up. Every once in a while you got to tell a few people to do the right thing. But I think by and large, the parents are very excited to be able to watch their kids in sports.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions?
I'll just add, and thank you to Mr. Johnson, Mr. LaPrette for following all those rules. And even though we're outside, mask is still required for everyone, chaperones, coaches, players, and spectators. I don't see that changing for the rest of the season, and so that's part of the form that we have where people are checking the things that they agree to for coming in. As you mentioned, there's really been no issues with that. It's been, folks have really listened to the guidance, and because everyone's interest is making sure the kids get to play and the parents get to watch. So I think it's been very successful thus far.
Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Johnson. So on to just the reopening. My thought is, we followed a similar format to what we've done a few other times this year. I had a forum last Tuesday. We've got over 1,400 views on there, and so while it's not quite bringing in revenue yet, my kids, respect the fact that I've got that many views on YouTube. So my thought is that I'm not going to rehash the whole presentation because I think most of you may have seen that. I would just hit on some of the highlights. Does that sound appropriate?
Sounds great.
So, the big news that, I think people want to understand, we decided on a window of time. I believe that all our administrators are in agreement that we would take all of the students back at the levels on the earlier days of the window. So elementary schools would begin March 31st for grades pre-K to 5, all students in person. Middle school and high school would begin on April 14th with all students in person. So that would be the plan. If we do need to change or alter that, getting closer we would, but we did say to families that we would give you at least a week's notice. So for elementary, that's really this Wednesday when we would tell you that this is happening. So the message that, pending some approval from you tonight, we would be messaging that this would begin for next Wednesday for elementary school. As we shared, and we're still working on some of the details, we're trying to be the least disruptive as possible for students that are choosing remote D cohort at the elementary level. They would most likely be with one teacher across the grade level, and that may be at a different school. We do have some volunteers at every grade level. We're going to post those positions officially tomorrow, and Mr. Clean and I are going to work on reviewing those with the elementary principals, trying to determine the most qualified candidates, and also looking at the data and seeing, if there's a candidate from each elementary school, but there's 6 kids from one school and none from another, it makes sense to be the least disruptive about those kind of moves. So we feel very confident based on those numbers that we would be able to move forward. The parents were great. We had about 95% fill out the survey for us, which is fantastic. We had really good numbers come in, and it's a small number of students in remote at the elementary level, a small number in remote throughout the district, but we have just under 7% in full remote, and that is a little bit less than what we had for the whole year. I think if we given a hybrid option, I think a lot of people would have considered it, but as I shared, that really isn't a choice for us. It's either remote or in person. So I think we are ready for those dates. That's sort of the big information that we'd be sharing out. And all those notifications to the cohort D families about which classes they would have and which teachers they would have, we would try to communicate that out as close to a week ahead of time as possible. I think this first window, we're going to be figuring out exactly those details this week. I think at the secondary level, there's some possibilities of maybe some changes of schedule or some other pieces that might be impacted, but students really would be with the same teacher, to my understanding, at those levels as well. Students that are under COVID protocol would still be able to, so if they're quarantining, if they have COVID, if they're in isolation, if they're a close contact, they would still be able to remote into their regular classroom. What we would say is that teachers would let them participate as soon as possible, but maybe it might take 24 hours for that to go through. So a teacher, if we just find out at 8 o'clock in the morning that the student is out of school, that student might have to be absent for the day, but then the next day they would be able to participate and continue. And that's really the same operational framework I would suggest that we use if a student has symptoms that could be COVID, because we don't want someone coming to school if they have COVID symptoms, but we also can't have everybody going remote just because of a headache, right? So we figure within that 24 hours, that first day, you're sick, you're working with a school nurse to determine if these symptoms are COVID related. We have the Mcas test that people can take if they're a part of that program. We also have other pieces they can consult with their physician, and then by day 2, we'd make that decision of where they need to go. Similar with travel, we have a travel advisory now, not a travel order, but we are able to go sort of above and beyond in our implementation. And so what we would recommend is that we follow that travel order exactly the same as we have. Staff and students would still be submitting a negative PCR test in order to come back to school after travel. They would have similar, if they get the test from their destination. When they get back, they just come back to school, they miss no school whatsoever. If they come back and need to get tested, we would have sort of that same idea where that first day, if they're waiting for results, they might be absent. Then the second day, if they're waiting for results, they would be able to be remote. But after that, they should have their results, and then they would either be positive, in which case they'd be in the protocol, or they would be negative and they would come back to school. So we wouldn't have people traveling and just staying out for 2 weeks, right? They would have to produce those test results either way for us. And the same thing for staff. So those are some big pieces there. Yes.
Just one quick question on that. So if somebody's out and they come back, if they're on COVID protocol,
Yep.
you're saying at the elementary, there's only going to be one grade level teacher doing the remote. So would they be in that class for that day,
They
or
would
they
not.
would remote into their typical classroom?
So the elementary teachers doing remote are for cohort D, those that have opted into that. There still will be, knock on wood, hopefully not very many, right? But if anyone is out due to COVID reasons, they would stay in their classroom and that teacher would teach remote. So for that period, okay? And the same thing if it's staff members out, that staff member would also be able to teach remotely the same. So in that case, travel related to COVID would be the COVID remote exemption. It would be the same thing. You'd stay in that classroom, you wouldn't be switching classrooms, but you would have to follow that protocol for those number of days. So there will be, for our elementary teachers, even if they're mostly working with the in-person students only, there will be some instances where someone in their class would be remote and they would not be moving to that other classroom. Yeah, good question. We have prepared the classrooms. Every classroom will be at least the 3 feet from seat edge to seat edge. We're going to try to, in any opportunity that we have, to maximize that and to have the maximum distance possible in every room. Principals have looked at every single room and have assured me that they can do at the least the minimum and whenever possible more. And so we're in a good place as far as that goes. There have been some requests to continue surveillance and pool testing. There's a recommendation from our discussion about continuing this as much as feasible, and so we are looking at the feasibility and the cost of continuing it for those that have opted in already. The cost obviously would be much less than, there's about 500 people or so that are currently participating out of our entire population, and which is over 3,000. And so we are thinking of the possibilities of continuing it for those that are opted in. There's a suggestion that we might also open it up to see if others want to participate, and strongly encourage this for student athletes, students that are performing, anyone that's coming together frequently, and sort of strongly recommending it for those groups as well. And the Mcas piece that I believe I spoke to earlier, those were kind of the main pieces. So I think maybe the most appropriate thing is just for some questions for clarification.
And if you have any questions, I'm looking at the participation on that survey. That's great. I mean, amazing. The BAS really wants our kids back. They've had more responses than they have students, actually.
Yeah.
It's a little as well.
So there's a couple of duplicates. We did go in and strip out duplicates, but a few times people filled out the survey 3-4 times. And so we stripped them all out. But I can see that there's a couple that have popped back in there that puts it up over 100%. So, yep.
Okay, then we have any questions or concerns? I would just say I thought you did an excellent job in the parent forum as usual. I appreciate you taking the lead and speaking with the unions as well and the teachers. I think that, while the committee has expressed desire to move forward with this, I also appreciate that we need to work with the unions that we have in this town, try to find something that works for everybody. And so I appreciate you taking the leadership and having those discussions. And I don't really have any questions. Rich, you unmuted? Do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Patrick, I was just wondering, as I understand it, the survey was also a declaration of intent for the parents. Is that right?
It was, yes. It was a binding. They had to choose full in-person or full remote, and we needed that information in order to make these decisions about how we would be able to offer.
And other than, if I remember correctly, there's one opportunity later in the year in May to opt into full in person at that point. But other than that, that's the only opportunity to change that. Is that right?
Yeah, at this time, what we're proposing is one additional opportunity. Any requests for changes by May 7th would be in place for May 10th. So we would take them as they come, keep a record. That's not to say that, we might be able to make, accommodations in different ways at different times, but that's really the idea of just, I don't want to have as the rule that we're going to have just a rolling, floating membrane here of which program you're in. And we would allow that two-way, but I'm very confident that it's going to be one way, that people are going to be in remote, see that it's successful, and want to come back in person. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people going the other way. I think the strong numbers that we're seeing here for in-person speak to me.
Thanks.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole elementary, the survey showing 39 kids remote across three schools. It's great.
Yeah, I did notice that there were fairly high numbers on the high school side, and especially the junior and senior classes. Thinking back to the Mcas accommodation for them, it might be challenging given the numbers, but
they're most likely not taking the MCAS at the senior level. There's a few students that might need to. The junior level, you're right, this year there's many that would need to. I did actually bring that up. I looked at this data with our student reps to the school committee today and talked to them a little bit about it and shared out some of the data from the student survey, which was fantastic. Paris didn't really get into it tonight. She was going to possibly speak about that, but it was interesting. There was an overwhelming support, about 60% for the start time changes from the students. They did not have a lot of comments about the return to school. I think people were ready, but the one comment you did see was hybrid's kind of working for us. I hope we can keep it. And they seem to think that it was more of a cultural piece than it was they felt that, students at this level have become accustomed to making it work really well from being at home, which I think a lot of people have experienced in their professional lives as well, that there's certain things that are working well, and why can't we just continue that? I think they're going to see that in college and in the working world, that there are certain options for students to do things online, and that might be something that they've presented. I've always said for years that managing yourself in an online environment is a skill set in and of itself, and they all had a crash course these last 12 months. And so I think that's more of that, what you're seeing there, but there's certainly, we did collect data about why they're choosing remote D, and again, this is parents filling it out, but they're saying they're concerned about the, pre-existing conditions of themselves or others at home. So that's what you're seeing for by and large, with those numbers.
Yeah. And there is a legitimate reason for some people to be out, and there's no shame in that. Exactly. I think I will say with the hybrid, I think I've seen in my own children, I've seen a huge jump in their responsibility and individual, responsibility on things. I mean, just being able to, know what time their different meets are and being on top of different things. And so, I see how there's some benefits to it, but at the same time, I think I know I'm ready to have my kids back full time, and my kids are somewhat ready now that it's getting spring out and they can sneak outside sometimes. They kind of like that, but I think they're generally ready as well.
And the question we've asked for the students and the families as well as the teachers is about what kind of supports would you need, and we saw definitely needs for technology assistance, digital learning, but social emotional strategies and access to counselors, access to school staff. We are very much aware that we've been providing a lot of these services. Our kids are in school 3 days every other week, so they have that access to counselors that they would in a typical year on those days. But there are other students that may be returning to school now for the first time in a year. And so we're going to have an increased presence in our schools and availability of our counselors. I know that Cynthia Conant, Michael Rosa, and myself, we're coming together to talk about this. We're going to tap into some of the town resources and some other consultants that we use on the counseling side to provide supports to staff and students, sort of an increased visibility over the next few days. So as this rolls out.
I'm glad you mentioned that comment, because that was the one thing on the survey that was a little bit confusing to me, because there was none of the above. It seemed like I think you had to choose one of them, and so I was a little bit. I didn't know if that was going to skew the results, because I probably would have chosen none of the above, at least for
Gotcha.
some of my children.
I thought I didn't make it a required question,
Yeah,
but maybe I
it
did.
wasn't required.
Yeah.
I think I left it blank.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to choose something, so. Okay, so if there's no more questions, I see no questions from any members of the public. I think we will entertain a vote to approve the superintendent return to in-person plan.
I move that we accept Dr. Daly's, sorry, I didn't mention. I move that we accept Dr. Daly's return to in-person learning plan.
Second?
Okay, second, any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. You're excited about it? Keep us posted. Thank you very much, Dr. Daly.
And again, I just want to thank all of the bargaining units for being so cooperative and collaborative throughout this, and the administrative team. I just have to say, custodial team, what Michael did with everyone to get the chairs in the rooms, the buildings measured, the amount of work that we're doing every day as new information comes out, and the turnaround time is so fast. Everybody's really, they've been doing it all year, but they've really stepped up here to get all these rooms ready and to receive students. So our plan, we won't be putting students at 3 feet apart until the 31st. With the exception, we may work with kindergarten because they're already all back, and so trying to use them in the rooms. But the desks are probably in most of the rooms already at that distance. But we would give people that heads up of when that's happening.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the middle school. See some friendly faces here. I don't know if I'm turning this over to Dr. O'Connell.
Thank you. I just want to share my screen. I hope I am able to do that quickly.
There it is. We see it.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I have 3 guests with me tonight. I have Justin Madison, one of our school psychologists, and he's going to speak about some pretty cool social emotional learning work that we've been doing. And then I also have Catherine Jones, who's going to talk about, she's the social studies curriculum leader, and she's going to talk about the new changes to the social studies standards and specifically civics. And then I have a student, I'm very proud of our student, Dawson Duffley. He's on the line. He's an 8th grade student who is our Project 351 ambassador. And he's going to talk about his experience. It's a little bit different this year with COVID. He's going to talk about his experience as a service leader representing North Reading Middle School. So that's the agenda. I'll go ahead and advance the slides. We're going to start with Justin. And Justin, just tell me what you want me to click on when you're ready.
All right. So thank you for taking the time to let me show a tool that we're really excited about in the guidance department. If you, Ms. O'Connell, if you could please cut and paste the guidance check-in form link into the message chat there. Before I talk about the guidance check-in form and how we use it in North Reading Middle School, I thought it'd be fun for us all to give it a test drive real quick. So it should be in the chat there, the message chat in a second here.
I'm going to put it in there. You're
Okay.
faster than me. Okay, there now.
All right. Go ahead and click on that. Fill out the form if you wouldn't mind, and we're gonna, after we fill it out here in a minute or so, we're gonna take a second here to look at everybody's data, check in, see how we're doing. We can click on the school community data link right now, and we can watch the data flow in.
We're filling this out right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says it only works from 9:15 to 2:45.
That's what the kids see. Because, and we have it set that way too, because for kind of legal reasons too, to make sure that a counselor can view it within school hours and react to it.
They don't have grade 47 up here for me.
Part of this stuff you have to pretend like you're not really going to see me tonight for an appointment, but you can just play around with it here a little bit. And there's the data rolling in. I filled out mine ahead of time I was a little overwhelmed by my homework of having to present to the school committee. So I was in the red zone, a little worried, but pulled together. And if you hit submit, it should work. People's data should come through in a second. There we go. So what you're seeing right now is a view that the counselors see when we have to enter the form in. And you probably realized that you had to zoom in a little bit to see some of the parts of the form. We tried to fix that, but it was not possible to make the mood meter larger. We have a color coding system to make sure that we keep track of when an entry has been viewed by a counselor, when a session has been scheduled, and when a student has been seen. We also keep track of kids using color coding of kids who do not show up or no-shows. So as you can see here, we have the timestamp when the entry comes through, the child's email address, their name, the grade they're in, the presenting problem, the zone of regulation that they feel like they're in, and also the specific emotion that they're feeling, and lastly, a rating of their intensity of their level of their emotion. Okay, we can go on to the next slide, Kathy.
I made this nice and big, and now I need to.
It's okay.
Sorry. Give me a second, guys.
Take this moment to welcome Mrs. Oliveto as well, the new vice principal. I think it's the first time that we've seen you here, Mrs. Oliveto, so welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight.
So why did we create this tool? As you can see, there's several reasons. One of the main reasons we developed this tool is because we want to cut down on avoidance and escape behaviors. Back in the olden days, like 2018, kids would come down to guidance whenever they experienced a negative emotion, and this would effectively oftentimes reduce their negative emotion, but we would also be reinforcing escape and avoidance behavior because kids would come down multiple times a day. We want to teach kids the tools to manage their emotions and maximize their time in the classroom. The second bullet there, this tool has allowed us to help students and continue to serve students in cohort D, as well as A and B students when they've been out of the building. Kids can fill out this form from their home. We have 161 entries and counting. This tool also has allowed counselors to better prepare for sessions. Now, before a student walks through my door, I know what counseling materials I may need, and I'm primed and ready to assess them better. With the intensity level rating, the counselors can triage if we get a ton of entries at once, so that we make sure we're helping the kids who are hurting the most first. We now have this individual student data, which is huge. This tool gives us real solid data that we can use to monitor student progress, and we can use this information for instructional support team meetings, as well as consulting with outside mental health professionals who are working with these kids. The addition of the mood meter has increased students' emotional vocabulary. We have some data on this that I'll talk about on the next slide. An unforeseen benefit of the guidance check-in tool has been that it gives administrators a heads up for contact tracing. Gives administrators a heads up that a counselor may have met with the child and may have been exposed. The way that the data is set up in the guidance check-in tool, we can do analysis at grade level of the whole school, and we can come up with targeted tier 1 interventions. So for instance, in the fall, if we go back to the last slide there for 1 second, in the fall, we looked at the data and we saw that 56% of all entries from students referenced anxiety, and 41% of all entries referenced stress. So we did a specific targeted SEL lesson for the whole school on anxiety, stress, and worry, defining those different emotions and also giving coping strategies and suggestions. And also in the fall, we noticed that our sixth graders were struggling with executive functioning. And we saw that in the data in the form of 42% of the sixth graders referencing concerns with classwork or homework. And that was much less so than the other grade levels. And the next slide.
Hey, Justin, I would just add, because of that data, the school psychologist put together a pretty cool lesson on executive functioning,
Yes.
tiered just to the sixth graders.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped over that. So what you all completed tonight was basically guidance check-in form 4.0. And Kathy, if you want to click on the student data here while I'm talking, that little link there for that. So Kathy and I have been working with a data specialist to try to get the most out of our data from this form. So the changes that we've made was that we changed the language to limit the number of reasons for visiting a counselor and number of emotions reported by the student. We added the mood meter, and then we also have added the zoning question. And if you scroll down a little bit, Kathy, people can see that there's the breaks where there's a black line there. It shows a break when the changes occurred, so we can analyze the data to see how those changes affected the kids' entries. And you won't be able to interpret this just by looking here because it's too small. But an example of how the mood meter expanded children's vocabulary. Prior to adding the mood meter, students reported a total of 18 different emotions or feelings. After adding the mood meter, students have reported 22 different emotions and feelings, and 17 of them had never been reported before on the form. So 17 entirely new entries. And interestingly, only 6 of the entries after adding the mood meter included the feeling of anxiety or anxious, which was the most prevalent emotion before putting the mood meter in. Some examples of the new emotions kids reported were satisfied, bored, miserable, glum, chill, despondent, alienated. So kids are definitely expanding their emotional vocabularies. And we can go to the last slide. So I definitely want to continue using the guidance check-in form during the new normal. I think this is a really helpful tool, and it's really going to continue to be helpful in the future. Right now the counselors, as far as the second bullet there, right now the counselors are already intentionally teaching students the different moods on the mood meter in small groups and lunch groups. I hope to expand that to the entire school eventually here. We're excited about one of the biggest hopes from this tool is eventually get to the point where we can look at data across school years and build in SEL lessons that get ahead of problems, such as the March Blues. We'd also like to be able to look at student issues from grade to grade and try to find grade level patterns. Next year, we also hope to use the guidance check-in tool to maybe check in with the entire school or similar technology to check in with the whole school during quarterly check-ins or possibly during care days. Right now, the only individuals filling out the guidance check-in form are students that are self-referring or those who have been referred by a teacher or a parent. And lastly, I hope this tool can be applied to the broader ruler program from the Yale Institute of Emotional Intelligence. The mood meter is from the ruler program, but it's just one small component. I think we're going to be looking into bringing the ruler program to North Reading Middle School in the future. And that will be great because it's a comprehensive SEL curriculum. So thank you for your time. Does anybody have any questions at all? Do I have time for questions?
We always have time for questions here.
Go for it.
Questions?
No, I don't have any time.
My only question would be, I'm just curious, like, is any of this information ever shared with classroom teachers? Like, if you see a student struggling or reporting anything, is any of this information something that can be distributed to teachers, or is it completely private from that?
So we would never show them the raw data, but we definitely do refer to this form in team meetings with teachers about how a kid is struggling and what the presenting problems are, definitely in their primary mood that they're presenting with. Definitely, we do that, but we do not share the raw data. Things that are discussed within a counseling session are held confidential and are not shared unless we have permission from the child and oftentimes the parent too.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Madison.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mrs. Jones.
All right. Well, good evening. We have a lot going on at the middle school and really the whole district having to do with a new framework. In 2018, there was a new social studies framework for the state, and it impacted pre-K all the way to seniors. And the driving force behind the whole new curriculum is civics and trying to integrate civics into all grade levels. But the crown jewel of the new history curriculum is a brand new 8th grade civics curriculum. So last year was the first year of the new curriculum, and so this is our second year. I know it's super tiny, but in this slide on the bottom, you can see there's 7 topics that we cover. And if we were to have a textbook, it would really be the Constitution of the United States. We're teaching kids about government at the federal level, the state level, the local level, and there's a real push to get students to understand, even though in middle school you can't vote, you can still be an active participant and you can get engaged in the most local sense. And so we actually had a judge. She's a community member, lives here in North Reading just by chance. The American Bar Association has a judicial outreach program, and we were supposed to do it last year, but she was supposed to come the day we actually shut down. Or not shut down, we left early, we were dismissed early. And so it was really thrilling that she was able to make it happen last week. She presented to half the kids who were in school and then half the kids who were remote. And she is a judge at Suffolk District Court. She does family and probate. And the kids, and it's tough, you're on a screen and she couldn't see the audience, but the kids were riveted to stories she had about her experiences in court. And then she explained to the kids how the judicial branch has played a role in expanding access and equality to people over time, which dovetails beautifully into our curriculum. Right now we're doing Supreme Court cases and we're seeing how the Constitution is interpreted differently over time. And so it was just perfect timing and wonderful for kids to see a real judge and a judicial in the flesh. So that was really neat. I feel a little bad because at the beginning of the meeting, we're talking about Mcas testing and how we'd like to see less of it. Well, there's a new Mcas and it's civics. So districts were asked if they wanted to volunteer for a pilot test this year, and we chose in North Reading to participate. There are 3 parts to it. There's a local classroom task, and then there's a state task, and then a test. So the classroom task and the state task have to do with primary sources, and it really focuses on the skills of kids. So we're really kind of excited. I'm excited to see how they do. We've worked with so many primary sources already, just to see them do it on their own. It should be exciting. They're not going to release the scores. It's really for the
I lost Catherine.
Your earbuds might
Let's
die.
unmute maybe, Catherine? Yeah.
Your earbuds dying.
This is what happens when we're teaching. It's so challenging.
Says you're muted, Catherine.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, earbuds just died mid sentence. So yeah, this is what happens to teachers all the time, and you got to flow with it, especially when you're right in the flow. I don't even know what we're talking about. The pilot is going to happen next week, and we are arranging for one cohort to do it, then the other cohort to do it. So all 8th graders will get a chance to participate, and it'll be really interesting to see how they react. And as much as MCAS is not enjoyed, it is something of a normalcy too. Just like hearing about the sports coming back. I don't know, there's something about, okay, this is what we do. We do a little bit of testing in March. So we'll see how that goes. And then the last new exciting aspect of our curriculum is, on top of all of the curriculum topics that we teach, in 2018, there was a law enacted for all 8th graders, and then once in their high school experience, all Massachusetts students have to complete a civic action project. So our student representative earlier this meeting mentioned that juniors and seniors are completing theirs in May. We're going to be starting our 8th grade civic action project after April vacation. And we've got a whole unit that's going to take weeks and weeks for them to, all 8th graders are going to have an opportunity to look into different topics and look at the school level, look at the local level, and come up and brainstorm ideas, do some research, and propose some kind of action, take action, and then reflect on it. So it's pretty exciting and scary at the same time, because you think we've got 170 8th graders, and we'll be doing it by classroom. So there's a lot going on with civics.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
That was perfect. Any questions for Catherine or myself?
Anything? Dr. Daly has a question.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank Catherine publicly for all that she's done, not only as a teacher, but as our curriculum social studies leader for middle school, really bringing in all the changes, grades 6, 7, and 8, attending so much professional development and doing so much work over these last few years, and really for taking, that challenge to take on the pilot of the assessment. It gives the students and the teachers a chance to see what that assessment could look like, and also give feedback to make that assessment the best it can be. So I really do appreciate that they're taking that on, and I think it prepares North Reading. The feedback to the state is always helpful as well from our students. So thank you for participating in that.
Oh, well, thank you. And you're going to see proof positive of some amazing 8th grader is up next, who's one of my students, and I can't wait to hear what he has to offer.
That's a great segue. Actually, Dawson is going to speak about his experience as the Project 351 ambassador, which is sort of connected to civics and taking on action. And so every year, I think you probably recall, school committee members, we're charged with selecting one 8th grade student to represent our school at a big service learning conference held in January in Boston. Pretty cool. Actually, Sophie Saquette was last year's winner, and she was going to try to join the call. I'm not sure if she's on the call, but so this year it could not be in person. It had to be virtual, but it's still very exciting. And Dawson is going to share just some highlights from his experience. It was a couple of weeks ago, and what he is hoping to do in the future. And I will say that this was the first year that previous ambassadors, Talene Toby was super helpful to Sophie Saquette, but Sophie Saquette has met with Dawson now twice to kind of just talk about the experience. And so I'd really love to see in a few years to have all 4 year freshman, sophomore, junior, senior ambassadors maybe take on some school-wide or district-wide service learning projects. So that's something that Dawson and Sophie and I, and I'm sure Talene would be on board as well. So Dawson, you are on. Thank you for waiting patiently.
Of course. Hi, my name is Dawson Duffley, and I've been nominated as this year's 2021 Ambassador for Project 351, representing the town of North Reading. I've been playing the flute for 5 years now, and I'm in my third year of being part of NRMS Student Council. I enjoy reading and being with my friends. I know that leadership and community are very important, and these are things that I want to harness over the coming years. I'm very honored that I've been chosen for this role, and I'm very excited for the months ahead. About Project 351. Project 351's mission is to mobilize Massachusetts youth into service by nominating an 8th grader from each town and city in the state. Project 351 takes young leaders and puts them into enriching service projects to help bring their respective communities together. For me, this goal is not just about uniting my immediate community, but helping myself become closer with people my age from all across the state. You can go to the next slide. Launch Day. Launch Day this year was very different from years past. Rather than coming together in Boston, we were all united on YouTube Live. We were given a very moving memorial to the late Congressman John Lewis, a poetic serenade from the Vice Dean Charlie Rose, a roll call to all of our service teams, and some very kind words from leading Massachusetts politicians like Charlie Baker, Senator Warren, and Senator Markey. Even online, I felt a connection with my fellow ambassadors and my service team. And up there is the link to the YouTube Live for the ceremony. So if you want to put that in chat, you can and check it out. But yeah, it was a really moving service. It's like about 45 minutes long.
I'll put that in the chat as soon as you're done presenting, Dawson, okay?
Of course. Okay. And this is my service team. I've been able to interact with fellow 8th graders from the South Shore all the way to the Berkshires. And it's the Katie Packenham team. She is very revered among Project 351, and I am part of a team of 8, and it's really nice. All right. For my future service, I've been getting super excited about my upcoming service. Last week marks the end of my leadership training and the beginning of my spring service. This service will be my first action in mobilizing my community. After the service, I'll have many more opportunities to serve, even once I'm in 9th grade and beyond. Project 351's impact. This experience will shape me in many ways that I might not even understand yet. I've been learning the value of listening to others, reaching out to people, and the value of community. Like North Reading Middle School, Project 351 has fundamental core values. These values are kindness, compassion, humility, and gratitude. Along with these values, I will continue to represent North Reading by showing respect, responsibility, and community. And that's about it for my slideshow.
Great job, Dawson. Thank you. We're so proud of you. I don't know if there are any questions for Dawson. I'm going to just grab that YouTube link and put it in the chat.
Great job, Dawson. The one question I'll ask is, so if this is only for 1 year, will you have the opportunity to come together in person with your fellow ambassadors at any point in time, do you think?
There's been no plans yet, but my service actually continues until my senior year of high school. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to meet with them at least once, and hopefully by maybe this summer or next fall.
Great. Good question. Dr. Daly.
I just wanted to say, Dawson, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. You're so well spoken and thorough, and we really learned a lot about the program. So wonderful job. Great job.
Okay.
That concludes our presentation. It's the first time we've done it virtually, but I really do appreciate Justin presenting. I'm super proud of the social emotional work and the data that we're collecting. It as many of you know, it's very important to me, and this is a way to really get a handle on exactly what our kids are feeling. And again, as Dr. Daly said, I'm grateful to Catherine for taking the lead on the social studies standards. And as a fellow social studies teacher, you know, it is something, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it's time that there is an assessment for social studies, and the fact that they're considering a project-based, more performance-based assessment is, I think, exciting. And then Dawson, it really was a pleasure, and you did a great job, and I'm looking forward to continuing working with you on your project for the spring. So that's all for us. I don't know if there are any questions in general.
Dr. Daly has his hand up again.
I just want to take one moment to thank Dr. O'Connell for her great work this year, great presentation tonight. And every administrator's taken on so much. In addition to everything you've done, you've also changed. Your assistant principal went to the bachelor school. Ms. Oliveto has come on board, and just seeing the two of you kind of scooting around the building, measuring things, getting everything, you guys have really hit the ground running and done a great job, and I'm glad to see Ms. Oliveto here tonight. You guys have made a wonderful team, and we really look forward to all the great things you've done, so thank you.
Yeah, I just quickly would say that Laura has helped so much already just with onboarding for MCAS. We talk about the MCAS for social studies. Laura has 20 years under her belt as a special ed teacher and really has been super helpful with preparing behind the scenes for MCAS administration, particularly regarding the scheduling of any accommodations and special education needs. So very grateful, and I've enjoyed working with Laura very much already.
Well, thank you. I would say the same. I'm learning a lot and enjoying my time at the middle school. It's been very busy and, go, and getting ready, as Kathy just said, for MCAS, and with the information changing by the moment, we never know what's going to happen, and now getting ready for in-person. I'm just excited. It's been a great experience so far, and I'm just looking forward to keep going. It's going well.
Yeah. Dr. O'Connell, the only other question that I had, I think everybody knows there was a parent forum for 6th grade parents earlier this year. I know there were some changes that came out of that. And so I know this is slightly off a general topic today, but I'd love to hear, sort of an update on that. I know there was some tools going, and I know there's Wednesdays, I think there was math, extra math help happening. Since we are here in the middle school presentation, I'm just curious how you've seen that happen, how you've seen that changing over the last few months.
Well, I certainly think that the students have become more comfortable in being middle school students. I think that, in hindsight, we did the best we could to prepare them for middle school, but it was certainly a different preparation than we would normally go through, given that we couldn't even meet them in person. And so I do think some of the concerns that parents raised in the fall were very valid, and I think that we did turn around pretty quickly and addressed all of them, I think, and I certainly there's always room for improvement, but we were able to, as Justin mentioned, put together an executive functioning lesson. We were able to provide opportunities for more math support, which was an academic issue. We were also able to put together some quick access technical tools for them to be able to know what classwork is due and when, like one stop on Clever rather than having to go to all the different Google Classroom pages. And then we also asked the 6th grade teachers to really kind of streamline and calibrate their expectations. So, one of the biggest struggles sometimes for children transitioning to middle school is getting used to all the different teachers and their expectations. And we tried to just say, let's just laser focus and narrow it down to, what are the top 5 things you need to do and be consistent. So I do think the children are more comfortable and are feeling better about middle school. I'm hoping that we are able to have a more normal transition for the rising 6th graders this coming fall, but certainly we'll wait and see what that looks like. But even if we have to do some more, things in the summer a little bit later than we would normally do, we certainly want to get ahead of that.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that everyone's doing here. I think there's a lot to come when everybody comes back. My 6th grader did request that we have 16-hour days and not go home for the summer because he actually really loves being in school. So, I think that's probably the minority opinion, but, I know it's been a tough year for everybody and there's a lot further to go, but, you know, I think we're doing a lot of good work inside.
I will just say, as much as the teachers are working hard, the kids have been amazing. And really just today, and this is a true story, I told staff members as leaving for dismissal, I probably passed 25 or 30 kids, and 99% of them greeted me goodbye and said thank you. You know, they're wonderful. Our kids are wonderful, and they're working as hard as us to make this work. And so to bring them all back to end the year kind of with more normalcy, I think is exactly what we all need. So I'm glad that we're headed in that direction.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. Okay, feel free to stay along. We're going to hear about solar power if anybody would like to.
I'm just
Okay.
going to put the link in the chat from Dawson, and then I think we'll all head out. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Connolly, do we have our older people here?
I had sent them a little about an hour ago. Probably looking at 7:45. So actually, I see them joining now. So I think we're right on schedule. So we're going to be joined in a moment by Sean Intorcio. I hope I said that last name right. And Greg Phipps from the Reading Municipal Light Department. They've been working pretty closely with myself and Michael Gilberto. Town administrator has been involved as well back in the fall. They did submit, as I mentioned at previous meetings, a request for information in the fall months. And they're here tonight to sort of summarize some solar options that both school and municipal towns could consider in North Reading, and kind of do a high-level overview of the solar program and the with RMLD and that partnership and what type of solar options are available to North Reading this evening. So I see that both Greg and Sean have joined us. So without further ado, I'll introduce Greg and Sean from Reading Municipal Light Department. So thank you for being here this evening.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite, and both Greg and I do, and the opportunity to speak with the school committee about solar and in the context of North Reading and municipal buildings. I take it everyone has a copy of the presentation, so we can just go through that. I'm going to go through and touch kind of on a high-level basis what we at RMLD have been doing, also in the context of what we've looked at. And as Mike was saying, there's been some discussions the last, year and a half almost about this. And so if there's questions that anyone has as a follow-up, feel free to reach out to either Greg or myself afterwards. So I'm going to, are you driving? Yeah, you're driving this, Mike. So we can go on to the next slide. Great, thanks. Yeah, so I'm going to start off by just talking about the current projects, some of the current activities or future activities we're going to be considering and looking at later this year. Talk about it in the context of potential opportunities for North Reading schools, as well as some of the regulatory framework that shapes that discussion and also shapes some current, but also some future financial opportunities and development opportunities. Next slide. Great. So RMLD currently has 2/3 community shared solar projects in our service territory. Both are located in Wilmington. And those that are not familiar with what community shared solar is, it's the opportunity where there's been a solar project developed on a site, and people, ratepayers, customers within the service territory can buy into those projects. So customers that may not be able to have, it's not feasible to have solar developed on their own rooftop can still participate that way. These two programs, two projects are about 3-4 years old, both in Wilmington, both close to each other over in the office park there. Together they make just under 3 megawatts in terms of capacity. And the number of customers we have are nearly 1,200. Both of these were developed by private investors that have entered into a purchase power agreement with RMLD. And it's interesting to know that both of these projects, we actually have waiting lists of customers to get on. So it's been very well received in our service territory. Next slide. So what does that mean if you buy into that type of project? So we have two programs, Solar Choice and Solar Choice Business, available to customers. And as part of this, what they do is you pay a monthly fee. For residential customers, it's $5. For commercial and industrial, $25. And the rate that customers receive is really based on the performance of those projects and the avoided transmission and capacity costs. In other words, since we were generating power on our side of the system, if you will, we're avoiding those costs. And so we look at those costs every 6 months to figure out what the rate is that and the savings that customers will be receiving from that. Typically what we've seen is it takes till about year 2 before customers start to sort of get back their investment, their monthly investment. And looking at it over 10 years, residential customers are expected to get about $300 in savings, and our commercial and industrial customers about $1,500, and municipal customers $1,500. Next slide. So part of this, since this was so well received in the past, one of the things that we considered in 2020, not 1920, was to look at the feasibility of maybe doing a third program or third project, starting by looking at the municipal buildings that are within our service territory, which obviously includes North Reading schools. So we solicited a RFI just to get some kind of top level feedback, ideas, thoughts from developers on, what's really out there. How might something look like? These were not definitive responses, but yet we wanted them to look at the portfolio of municipal buildings that we had and give us their thoughts about how things might work. So last year, as we all know, was a bit of a crazy year. We did get responses to that. They were interesting. I think we certainly have been focused on some other things as well as most of our service territory in the world. So this is something that we kind of put aside for 2020, and we plan to look into this in more detail later this year, probably in the fall. So let's take a step back and let's talk about what might, what are some scenarios that would work for solar within the context of North Reading schools. And there's 3 different kinds of scenarios, and I'm going to go through each of them. They have kind of some benefits and just different structures, some different cost implications and things like that. Next slide. So the first scenario would be a customer-owned generation. This is the traditional type of system we all think about, whether it's on your rooftop or your business or what have you. And so in this context, it would be North Reading schools undertaking the development for that particular type of project. So North Reading schools would have the upfront kind of research and financing to look at what the specifics would be for a project developed on one of its rooftops. So there's definitely some upfront costs that have to be incurred by the schools. There's some benefits, obviously. We, RMLD, have a program, a solar program, depending on how the project's developed, that could qualify for a rebate and incentive of up to $50,000. So that's certainly a financial gain for the schools. Also, obviously, since they're generating on the roof, that helps to offset the monthly electricity costs. And then finally, another benefit would be is if the production of the particular project exceeded what the schools needed in terms of their own energy needs, they could actually sell back to RMLD the excess energy at what we pay for our monthly fuel costs. And it's kind of, it varies by month, but it's somewhere in that 3 3/4 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Typically, what we've seen for projects like this, there's about a 10-year payback. So it's certainly a more longer-term type of project. Again, well suited for a business, a long-term business or municipal entity to look at. Next. The second scenario is to use North Reading schools as a community shared site. So just like the other 2 projects that RMLD currently has, it would be to do one on a rooftop for one of the schools. So here, what occurs is a bit different. So in cases like this for community shared solar, RMLD will be the one focusing on a feasibility study to look at what are the infrastructure requirements for that program or project to link into our grid. What does that project look like, in terms of size, configuration? And does that project meet our resource portfolio? Does that make sense? We have certain requirements in terms of the mix of fuel types and mix of types of purchase power agreements that we need to have. So does that make sense? Then RMLD would then enter in, just like in the other two cases, enter into an agreement with a third-party developer, where the developer would be the one to finance and build the system. And then RMLD, together with that developer, would enter into a purchase power agreement. In other words, the power that is produced by that particular project would then be sold to RMLD. The community benefit is that our residential and business customers in our service territory could subscribe to the production that comes out of that system. So again, like I said, this has been well received by our customers, and it's certainly a potential opportunity. But again, all those pieces have to fit together. Benefits for North Reading under this scenario is there's no upfront capital investment. There would be some lease payments to it. Typically, these are not significant, they're not huge, but it is somewhat of a source of revenue for the entity. The next scenario would be a third-party agreement. This looks a lot like the community shared solar. The structure is the same. I won't go through all the details. The only exception here is the residential and business customers don't buy into the particular project. In this case, the generation from the panels from the project are sold directly to RMLD and then go into the mix of our total portfolio. Okay, so I want to take a step back here to kind of frame up what are the regulatory contexts that has occurred and is occurring. Because that's, I think, important to understand as we look toward potential opportunities, whether they be at North Reading schools or anywhere within our service territory. Well, a lot of this push within Massachusetts for solar and renewables in general, Kate, started back, 13 years ago now with the Green Communities Act. And the spirit of this was to establish a set of kind of requirements that utilities would need to comply with to really promote the development of renewable energy. So the big three pieces here are the Renewable Portfolio Standard, the RPS. There's two types, Class 1 and 2, and then the Alternative Energy Portfolio. And I want to talk just briefly about those three different ones on the next slide. So RPS Class 1, this was developed to really carve out and promote the development of renewable energy and capacity, and in particular solar. As part of this regulation, they had what we call a carve out, kind of a set aside emphasis on the development of solar renewable technologies. And what it did, it was established in 2010 or enacted in 2010, and it set a target for renewable solar of 1.6 a year, and then it slowly increased over the time period. They also established, and we call these SRECs, okay, solar renewable energy credits. So in addition to that, in 2014, there was another wave of that to actually be a bit more encompassing, not just solar, but now solar and storage, because I think we hear a lot about that in terms of, yes, you collect all the energy during the day when the sun is out, but what if you need it at nighttime? So now there's more of a coupling of solar development with storage, with the battery technologies. So the Class 1 RPS was targeting newer types of technologies. So these requirements all applied to projects and capacity that was developed after 1997. As solar has become much more, I'll call it mainstream, much more common, this regulation has really done its work in many ways. And so with that is the fading away of some of these carve-outs specifically for solar. It's not a bad thing in terms of that's showing what the market has developed, but it has some implications in terms of the financial piece of it. And so there's actually no new SRECs that are now given under this regulation. So these are fading out. The RPS Class 2, it's very much the sister of this, except it applies more towards older renewable technologies, those that were developed before 1997. But again, these are fading out because after 10 years, there's no longer the benefit, the financial benefit that comes with the regulation from that. And another piece that played into this as part of the Green Communities Act was this APS. And what it was this was even broader. This was set to include solar and a variety of renewables. And it gave targets for utilities to have a certain composition of their portfolio of renewable technologies. And they could get it a couple different ways. They could get it by having their own renewable technologies, that they have within their service territory. They could actually purchase these RECs, these credits, if you will, from other utilities that already had met their standard and wanted to actually sell them to another utility or another municipal light plant. Or they could actually buy, if you think about this as kind of a penalty to meet that credit. So those are kind of the background. And those are things to keep in mind as we kind of look at the 4 schools within North Reading. And so what we did is we looked at, okay, we know the history now. There's some changing in terms of the finances, in terms of the credits and what's being allowed under the regulation. So when we look at the 4 buildings, there definitely is potential there. The potential ranges, you can see quite a few, from 235 up to almost 1900 kW, big difference. What's the difference? It depends on the type of infrastructure, the amount of infrastructure that we would have to do to make those projects feasible. In other words, where it hooks into the grid. And so this, for the high school, this is one of the larger ones of the 4 buildings that we looked at. Then we also looked at the 2 elementary schools. We can flip to that one. Again, a wide range depending on the infrastructure. And again, the amount of infrastructure in terms of the cost that would happen would be kind of as the feasibility study that would be done at the outset. And then looking at the Hood School, anywhere from 370 to 595, slightly smaller rooftop, also a bit shadier there. So that's a smaller amount. But the town hall, the last one, that's actually fairly significant, both in terms of what's on the roof. There's not a lot of things up there. And again, how it would do it. So that's kind of a lot of things all together. What we've done, what we're thinking about, the regulations, what's the potential for North Reading schools. And these all have come down to kind of, not surprising, economic, environmental, and education. Because things have shifted within the market in terms of these SRECs going away, that extra adder, that extra benefit by investing in that type of solar technology, that's really helped to change the financial side of things nowadays in terms of undertaking a new project versus a few years ago when we undertook, say, the community shared solar. So the economics for developing these types of projects are a bit different right now. As we move under the regulatory environment in Massachusetts toward a more significant requirement for renewable technologies, these economics may switch, going down the road. But right now, some of these projects, it's certainly for North Reading schools, not sure if the economics really pertain to that. Certainly there's environmental benefits, and there's also an educational component that could come into this, something to consider. I know that the high school is very active in terms of kind of their green committees and their sustainable studies for their students. One thing to think about is, kind of a demonstration project. Is this something that, could be sited in the parking lot or somewhere back there to yes, generate something, but also help, as a teaching mechanism for the students. So that's a lot to consider and a lot of information, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if you have some later, certainly we can follow up as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions they want to start with? I will say that I think I may have taken in about a third of what you said and completely understood it, so I appreciate the overview, but I think my question starts with the financial. Like, there was no numbers listed in any of that. When you talk about a small lease or any of that, I mean, do you have any idea based on, you know, just looking at maybe some of the school buildings, or like if you just look at the high school, middle school buildings, do you have any idea on what sort of revenue for the schools it would come with? Because, and just to take one step back, when we went down this road before, we got a bid from somebody who didn't quite understand the bid. I think we were excited about the dollar amount that we saw, but, you know, I know that we're not going to be anywhere near there. I think the challenge that we have is that Reading Municipal is very good to us in that, like, our rates are very good. But I'm just curious about, you know, what dollar amount we're talking about, even if it's after a couple of years. Do you have any idea on that? Like, even if at the middle school, high school building?
Sean, let me take that one. This is Greg.
Sure.
And I think, you know, there's a couple different mechanisms to answer your question. Bottom line, if it was to be one of the second or third scenarios that Sean walked you through, where somebody else owns it and they're paying a lease payment, the lease payment could be in the range of, these are fairly small systems, anywhere from $5,000 to maybe $18,000, maybe $20,000 at the most, but you got to be thinking about $10,000 roughly. But it depends heavily in terms of what the incentives that are in place. Just as an example, those two projects that we put in place, or that got put in place in Wilmington, which is part of our survey territory, those are part of the SMART program, and there were some significant incentives in place. There's a lot of regulatory changes happening right now, and we as RMLD are very interested in adding more solar to our service territory, and schools are a great idea, but until some of the new incentives play out, the economics aren't very favorable. However, you know, we're going to take another look at it at the end of this year, and then realistically dig a little bit deeper into it next year, because I think some of the potential incentives and the regulatory pieces will become a little bit more clear. We're highly motivated, but the economics need to work all the way around. Does that help?
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you very much, Greg.
Great, super.
There are questions? I mean, from what I'm hearing, it's basically, this is the structure of it, but we should wait right now and push pause.
Yeah, in reality, it's going to be a 2022 event at the earliest, realistically. The one thing that we had talked about internally before, and that last bullet, the education element, you know, there might be an element, there might be a scenario where somebody makes a donation, or there's funds where, you know, 3 or 4 panels get put up somewhere, you know, in the school grounds. It becomes a school project. It's not an economic play, it's an education play, and that could be a fall 2021 event. But anything that's significant on the financial side is going to be 2022 at the very earliest. And again, as Sean mentioned and I mentioned, we are highly motivated to add more solar to the network for both compliance reasons, but also just, you know, environmental elements as well. But that's probably 2022 at the earliest.
Thank you. Rich, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that presentation. It was excellent and definitely clarifying, although I'm sure much of it went over my head as well. But so a couple of quick ones. I mean, I certainly don't think we're seriously considering scenario 1, but you mentioned you could expect a 10-year payback, and that's obviously just an estimate. But you know, then I assume that's sort of based on current prices that would be paid for the energy that was generated, or the energy, or the saving, you know, the energy we're not using or taking off of RMLD.
Yep, that's part of the payback. Yep.
So that's something that is also, you know, from a payback standpoint, is something to be monitoring as well in terms of where those costs go from here, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally, and I think Scott said this too, but this generally the takeaway here is, you know, if this is something we as a committee are serious about, we just need to keep investigating and keep our eye on, and you know, we'll rely, you know, keep interrogating you guys and making our interest known, but just watching for the right economic conditions.
Yeah, and Rich, just so you know, the dialogue, we've got a pretty good dialogue going back and forth right now, which is good. And Mr. Connolly and I touch base at least once a month, just in terms of what's updating. We've got some other, he's taking advantage of some other rebate programs, lighting programs, etc. So, but we're probably going to push. I know you guys are ready to catch the ball and you want to do it, but we're trying to figure out how we can throw the ball to you. I mean, the motivation's high to figure out how to make this work. So we're gonna be pushing as well as you guys pulling.
That's excellent. Thanks.
Greg, my one thought when I was thinking about this earlier was it seems like we missed the boat on some of the opportunities before. But with that being said, I don't know that our old building would have supported some of this. And so what's challenging here is our community has done a great deal of work on our infrastructure in our building. And it seems to be almost punitive that we didn't have the building. We've now built a brand new high school, middle school. We put a new roof on the little school. It seems like if there was some sort of, legislation that gave some sort of benefit to a school or municipal that invested in their infrastructure, that maybe they get some rebates if within, 5 years of doing that you put some solar on those new buildings.
Yeah, so I think, Scott, what you're suggesting is there might be some other incentives that are not necessarily certificate incentives that might contribute to a project because it's a municipal installation, because it's education. I mean, we just submitted last Friday for EV chargers, DC fast charge chargers. It was a state grant tied to the VW Dieselgate piece. But the interesting piece is that there was additional incentive monies where the properties or the sites were municipal sites. So you're right, there might be other things, and we keep looking, for different elements in terms of funding sources. And I know you guys do as well. So we got to keep the dialogue going. But there could be other things that could contribute to all of the cost to make it work. And at the end of the day, who owns it is secondary to us. We want to make sure that the power gets generated and the environmental benefits there. And again, it depends upon where the funds are coming from. At the end of the day, the equipment still has to be paid for. And that's what we're looking at right now.
That's Daly.
I just wanted to share, thank you for the presentation. We found this very enlightening. And I just want to note, not to put him on the spot, but we have at least one student on the call talk about civic action. Jason Shula has been reaching out to myself and Mr. Connolly to learn more. He has an interest in solar, and so that student engagement part, that alone might be something for us to consider. And so I think that's really exciting. So thanks for sharing this tonight.
Oh, our pleasure.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for carving out time for us to talk to you.
Yeah, and we really do appreciate the, that we do know that we get a separate rate from RMLD. And I don't know how common that is, but we do appreciate that because we're in budget season right now, and I can tell you our big buildings are expensive, and so we very much appreciate any break that we can get when we're trying to balance the budget so that we, aren't spending as much money on, keeping the buildings lit and heated as we are on, on actual students. So appreciate that.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any vote to take right now, but I mean, it seems like it's a wait and see, long game approach, and possibly reach out to local legislators to see if there is something that can be done to advocate for this, because I think everybody agrees that it would be good for the environment if there was more solar, and
Absolutely.
we just need to make the economics work, in order to do that. So
Perfect. Yeah, if you guys push from your side, we'll do the same. Very good.
Yep, keep the dialogue going.
Appreciate
All right.
And thank you, Michael Connolly, for helping put this together, for your work.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Stay well.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to flip the next two just in case people are still paying attention, because I think there's probably going to be more interest in the school calendar than the policy on holidays. But okay. No offense to the policy subcommittee, but
Sure.
do we? If you could talk maybe a little bit about the school calendar.
They definitely go together, and we can talk about the policy in a moment. But The school calendar updates, just as a follow-up to our discussion last time, we have looked a little bit more closely at the calendar this year and realized that the 7th, if we were to start on the 7th of September, that would be sort of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and we would not want to be having the first day of school be a high holiday. And so this calendar that you have before you tonight proposes, similar to last time, staff coming back on the 1st, on the dates for the professional development day, the 2nd for an orientation day. We would then have Labor Day. The Friday would be off for Labor Day. 7th would be no school, and we would start with students on the 8th. That would bring our last day of school to June 27th, and that would be, again, with 5 snow days, hopefully similar to this year. It's not very often that we use all 5 of those days. And so that would be, that is a little bit late, but I think this is an unusual year. And we did get a request, when we make certain decisions, can we share it with parents and get feedback? I think that is something to consider for the future, but I believe that we don't have Labor Days quite this late for another 5 or 6 years. I think it goes to very early Labor Days after this. So.
And again, I heard the comment about getting from parents, but we do have this at open meetings so that parents can be heard here, to be, upfront about that. And I mean, ultimately, we've stayed with the idea of students starting after Labor Day, and when it is late, we try to accommodate as much as we can. I mean, I appreciate the educators coming back before Labor Day as it is. I know that's a hardship for them already. And just to kind of recap what you just said, we were trying to move the last day from the 27th, and the idea was starting on the 1st. Teachers can't start before the 1st, but if that Tuesday is off limits because of the high holiday, then I don't think there's really much discussion to have here. I think teachers can't start before the 1st, and that would be the first day for the students would be on the 8th. So I think it falls into place, and there's not a whole lot we really can do with that, honestly.
And just to be clear too, I did consult with a local rabbi about the 2nd day of Rosh Hashanah, and he felt that he basically said if anyone has questions, they can talk to him, because he feels like on day 2 of the holiday, even being the first day, that would be okay. And many districts that do observe Rosh Hashanah every year are not in school on the 7th and are in school on the 8th. So we felt that we were okay starting on the 8th.
Good question. So obviously the big drive behind this isn't the start of the year, it's the end of the year and trying to get everything wrapped up without having to go too late into June, because if we get hit with 3 blizzards, it could really make for a mess. Obviously we've got now out of COVID much more fluency in doing online learning. And I know, we don't want to then jump from that and say, oh, okay, well, we need snow days, we can just make them up online. But does that create some sort of cushion so that if we have an incredibly snowy season, that looking ahead in March when we get hit with yet another storm, we could look into doing that to prevent having to talk about other solutions at the end of the year?
Sure. So I advocated this year for making use of the remote snow day option. I would continue to advocate for that at the state level. All indications from the Department of Ed is that that was a 1-year only availability, and that would not be available to us next year because of equity issues. And so I'm not sure what that looks like. I think there's many of us that found that to be very successful. Everyone has been through it. We've all, every student in the state has experienced remote learning now, and I think personally that should be something that continues. So just quick history of it, go back a couple of years, there was a committee formed. It was decided that those folks, as a part of the pilot, would be able to finish, but moving forward, we would never be able to have remote days again. And then 2020 happened, and everybody had remote days, right? So everything that I've heard is this is it for this year, but I think we will continue to advocate for it. Again, those few times we use it as a tool, I think we talked a lot about this earlier, but that, everyone likes the traditional snow days, sledding, and all those things, and that's great, but sometimes the remote days are useful for different circumstances, like power outages or high winds, which we've had a lot of lately. And we haven't really had power issues, but we could have, and instead of being here into the last week of June, you do a remote day on some of those days, and it could be, very useful. So,
thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions on the calendar?
Just one point, you know, the start times that are listed in here, that's one piece we still would revisit on the 25th when we do our presentation. But for now, those are the times that we are suggesting as well. So really, this approval is so we can clearly communicate out the start dates and end dates for next year for planning purposes for folks.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school year calendar, specifically the start date, and I say all the dates, but understanding that the times are still to be determined.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion on the calendar? Okay, we'll do our vote. Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Now we go to the holiday policy. Who has this one?
I can do this one, Ms. Imbriano.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start with the motion and then we'll have discussion. Would you like,
You could do this. You could do a motion. Sorry.
Okay, sure. I move that we approve the first reading of revised policy AEAB and keep the track changes as delineated in the document.
Second.
Okay. Do we have discussion on this?
Just to point out, some of the language changed for anybody that didn't have a chance to notice at all. It's we're adding Juneteenth as a holiday, which is now it's a school holiday now that it's been recognized as a Massachusetts state holiday. And then keeping with that, it's reorganizing the policy a bit clearer in where we are, in that we're syncing our holidays up to match those legally observed in Massachusetts and organizing them chronologically, which for some reason they hadn't been. And that's it. There's also a couple typos in here, but those get fixed pretty quick.
Massachusetts President's Day to Washington.
Yeah, that's what they call it. They call it Washington Day, but Patriots Day is the plural apostrophe, and Veterans Day, you know. Anyway, is there any?
Those who are looking, it didn't go from 8 holidays to 12.
Right, right. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, we had, it's not, Independence Day didn't just become a holiday, but you probably knew that. But in talking about it, we thought clearly most of the school community really only thinks about Labor Day through June. However, the school's open year round for different purposes for different employees, and we observe as a school community even those holidays in the summer. So it's worth mentioning all of our holidays.
Before, were Mr. Connolly and Dr. Daly supposed to be here on July 4th? Letting them off?
I think this was limited to, and the order was in chronological starting at the school year, and it only included the school year holidays, but because, exactly, so many contracts speak to all these different holidays, and I think, so we originally looked at this to make sure that we were inclusive of the newest Juneteenth Independence Day holiday, and then we figured we'd expand it. There was at least one other that we thought was missing, like Patriots Day, I believe. So,
yeah.
And we'll make those adjustments to this, just the typo.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table. We'll do a roll call vote on the motion. Chris?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 5-0. Thank you all. Now we have mid-year update on the school committee goals. Ms. Imbriano, are you leading us in this discussion?
I am leading you on that discussion. I should say, Dr. Daly sent out the self-evaluation for the school committee at the same time he had sent it out for the superintendent. So we had plenty of time to go over it, and everyone did. For the most part, we're pretty much on target with our goals. There's a couple that there's a discrepancy on. Policy under leadership and governance, there's a support of the administration's effect to ensure the privacy of data and cybersecurity. There was one disagreement where they thought we hadn't started it, but I think even in today's presentation, there was mention of a cybersecurity grant that was filled out. So I know it's in the works, and I did mention, not sure where we are in the current efforts. However, we've always supported the privacy of data and cybersecurity in the past. So that was just one little blurb, but we're on target with that for the most part. The development of a cycle review of school committee policies, don't really have one per se that we sit down every 6 months and do it, but we do, as changes come forward through either the state or other forms, we do review those particular ones. So I think we're okay with that one. Strategic planning is good. Hiring, evaluation is pretty good. Under finance, under human resources, we have a little bit of a disagreement. The administrative team has reviewed internally, but additional work needs to be done to fully achieve the goal of supporting the superintendent in an audit of hiring process to ensure that we are identifying and removing any potential bias that may impact the recruitment, hiring, and retention of qualified, diverse candidates. I know the administrative team works diligently, when it, on this. So, but the fact that we don't have an update, maybe on a continual basis, is where I think there's a difference. And as for professional development, do we actively engage in it? There's a little bit of discrepancy on that. Some people believe that we do not, because we don't do it as a group. Some people do attend different workshops, so their thought process was maybe that we're not on target, but we haven't not started it. I kind of include the listserv, which is a tool that is granted to all school committees. And you can go there and type out a question and get multiple answers from different people across the state. And though I don't actively ask questions, I do read the listserv to see what's going on. So I kind of call that professional development.
Denny, if I may just, I've been the dissenter on some of these, I'll point out, but some of them are just, I don't know where we're at because we haven't gotten the updates on things. On this one, I think we had specifically said we were going to try to do a professional development with some local communities,
right.
And we didn't get that started because of what's happened this year. Right. But originally in the summer, that's what we had talked about doing, was trying to invite a speaker and try to coordinate with some of the other communities, and we just never got a chance to do that this year.
Oh, I agree. But if you consider the list service maybe part of that, then you don't have to give yourself a big old 0. You can give them a very real 1, Let's see. Everything else looks good. In terms of the financial and asset management, we seem to be right on target. Educational program, we seem to be on target with. A little bit of a discrepancy on supporting a review of the curriculum and ensuring diversity, equality, and inclusion. While there may have been some work done on this, the committee hasn't heard much in terms of progress, other than it's a goal for each educator this year. Everyone agreed. The administrative staff has this on their radar, and they need to do work towards this goal. If someone's interpretation is that we have supported the administration in this route, which of course we do. And there was another one agreeing with not having the knowledge of progression that's been made so far. So some of it might just be communication, or just simply asking the question to get to the bottom of it.
Add something there, Denise?
Sorry.
So when I read that support or review of the curriculum to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's the review. It's not saying to, the plan or the execution of the plan. So I think that's why I was sort of that outlier say we were on target, because we knew that was going to be a goal as our administration, and we've supported that. So I I think it's that ensure part that maybe got people hung up, but it's actually written as supporting the review. I think that's why I said that. I felt like we did that.
No, and I agree. And a lot of it, it's, of course, we support unless you guys are going way off, you know.
But it definitely,
will.
that review has happened. I mean, even as a parent, it's trickled down into educational materials and everything across the board. So I might be more privy to it because I'm a parent and see it, but I know it's been spoken to several times. So I feel like it obviously, you know, definitely took place, that review, because there's been implementation across the board.
Yeah. And again, I would say I agree that it's happened, and I think I've seen it anecdotally through different things, but I don't think we've heard every teacher has as one of their goals this year, you know, goal. But we haven't really heard what that is, or like, have we reviewed the curriculum and, you know, no changes were made, or we've made a few changes at this level. And that would just be the sort of thing that when we were looking through, you know, as a member, I would like to have seen. And I don't think it's ours really.
But
just to understand what it is.
If I can jump in, you know, I think a lot of this speaks to how we're writing our goals. And I think if we're going to write something that says we support an effort on that the administration is undertaking, then we probably want to include in the goal a couple of how are we going to support it, or how are we going to follow it. So, for instance, in something like that, where we might ask the administration to make a report at some point during the year, or a couple points during the year at a meeting, just to give us an update, a specific update as to what's happening in that area, so that we can then, you know, provide feedback, or at least you know, understand what's going on, rather than just this kind of passive we support everything that the administration is doing and the schools are doing. That's sort of, I think we all agree with that, but I just think we need to think about, and we made some progress this last year, partly by narrowing the focus a little bit, but also, but I think there's just opportunities to do that in such a way that it's, you know, that what we need to do to support that is a little more explicit.
So thank you. So a couple of things there to note. So with the equity work especially, two things. One, our assistant superintendent began on December 1st, and so he's scheduled to present in April, and that's when you'll be getting all those updates for this year. That's really work that he's kind of led. He's led some of our groups that have explored this, and he's really in charge of the evaluations and the goals and giving that report. So you will be getting that soon. And the other piece just to keep in mind is, you know, these goals, I know that we set them up as one-year goals here, but the work around equity is not something we're going to meet, measure, and solve in 1 year. So this is a multi-year process. From the professional development we've done with the administrative team, they're saying, you know, 7 to 8 years before you're really seeing some of these results. However, you are seeing immediate changes, as Ms. Belwell has referenced, through materials being sent home, changes in projects, changes in design. So we will certainly include some of that in our updates. And I will just share something that we are exploring. We've had a lot of success with multi-district collaboration through the SEAM Collaborative with our SEL position. That's a shared position. And so we are exploring, we're having discussions around a diversity and equity kind of coordinator for the region, for the area. It's a position that a lot of our districts would love to have, but we don't see that in our budget to support a full-time position, so we're exploring it through multi-district work. And that, part of that person would help and support and train our staff about bias around hiring, and that some work I'm going to do with my team as we enter into the hiring season. We're going to do some of that work here, but I think that needs to happen at a much larger level, at a much deeper level. And in addition, this person eventually, we would hope, would help us to really set up a network to help diversify our hiring staff. And so that's really a position that I think is needed, but due to budget constraints, we think it would be great to share that. So that's something that we are exploring, and I'll have more to share on that as we have more meetings and updates.
And just to be clear on this, I think most of these topics, what was mentioned was not being off target, but not started, was just we haven't heard yet.
Yep.
So I don't think it was you know, condemnation on anything. I think a lot of times there was just we haven't had that meeting yet. You know, we haven't done this yet.
Yep.
And that's where, you know, some people rated it as it's on target because we've heard anecdotally that it's happening. I, on a couple of them, said, well, I don't know that they're started yet because we haven't heard the update yet, so.
And I would just also say that I don't think that that's necessarily, I mean, ultimately, Patrick, obviously you'll report to us what you're doing, but if we need to hear something earlier, then that's up to us to ask you for it. You know, like I say, these are our goals, not your goals, you know. So it's really, if we're going to have a goal like that, and if we're going to evaluate that goal midway through, we have to have some kind of, how are we evaluating it? The only way is to ask you for an update, I think, right? And certainly nothing.
But if it's coming, then like with goals.
Well, and that can be the update. That's fine. That could be the update. But I guess what I'm saying is we should be more proactive about saying, you know, can you give us an update about this at the next meeting? Because this is one of our goals to keep an eye on. And I just think we're too passive with our goals right now, that we just don't do that. We just sort of wait, you know, that's all I'm saying.
And I think, you know, in a typical year, we will be able to more regularly have those dialogues.
Yes.
I would say as well, I agree with you that these are your goals, and I, you know, any encouragement that we have to follow through, we certainly will. And again, this is a mid-year update, so this is a different tool for you use it now for the first time, I believe.
Yep.
This way, and this is exactly how we use this with our educators. It's about course correction at this point. So when you say not yet started or off course or anything, the whole idea is it's mid-year. So we now have time to make sure if we want to get to that 1 year benchmark at the end of this goal, what do we need to do to make sure? So this is a good time as a reminder to dust them off possibly and say, okay, let's make sure we're doing this. And it sounds like we're all still committed to these goals and you do want us to continue them. And you can certainly make requests for presentations, updates on any of these topics. So I think it served its purpose. That's exactly what it's meant to do at the mid-year, to reassess where you are, reprioritize, evaluate, and give directives moving forward in order to meet those goals.
Yep. Janine, anything else?
So yeah, just on the last one, there was a little bit of a debate on family and community relations in the way of community partnerships, to participate in and support ongoing work groups, social justice, and reopening. There was an outlier that said that we weren't on target, and I just wanted to point out that though the groups haven't met continuously throughout the year, they've been meeting in working groups. The superintendent will work with the assistant superintendent to bring the groups together and invite us to participate. I guess I kind of took it as a different look and said, though the groups have not met consistently through the year, the several meetings that I've attended have been approved, and we have approved the student organized group specific to social justice. So I thought that we're on target with that one. So just a point of correction.
I have no problem being the dissenter on things.
Other than that, I think we did pretty good as a school committee. Not too many decisions or off-target events.
Okay. More discussion, comments? Okay. The fun part of the agenda, routine matters, minutes. So March 4th, 2021, open session. Janine, you want to lead us in this?
I certainly will. I would like to make a motion to accept the March 4th, 2021 open session meeting as written.
Second?
Any discussion, anything else on this?
I didn't see anything.
Did I?
You did a good job.
Okay, good job, Cindy. Roll call vote, Janine?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And I as well, passes 5-0. Budget update, Mr. Connolly.
Great, thank you. Lovely. So this evening, there's a couple updates this evening on the budget update. The first is the March budget report, which kind of summarizes financial activity of the middle of March. Again, not a lot of new information from previous reports, so I'll kind of go through it pretty quickly. Through the first half of the report, the first paragraph essentially speaks to our ability to address a lot of the unforeseen costs due to the COVID-19 virus at the start of the year. We certainly leveraged all the available funding that we received from the federal grants as well as through the Municipal Cures Act of the town. And that process has gone fairly smooth, and we certainly were able to do a lot of things that we need to do to buy the equipment and make the updates and the supplies and materials that we needed to safely reopen schools. We continue to monitor the replenishment of any necessary PPE supplies and so forth, cleaning sanitation supplies, and we are very in a good position, good relationships with the vendors that can now get materials to us pretty quickly. So that process is going well. I will say on this note on the report that even though all of our transfer requests from our general fund that would ultimately need to be transferred over to the town Municipal Cures Act funds with COVID-19 expenses, not all that is taking place. So you still see that reflected in the report. I'm trying to get an update from the town finance office when all that will occur. My hope is that it happens soon, so make the closeout process that we approach that in the final quarter much easier. So still working on that with the town, but certainly everything has been submitted. The second part of the first page talks through some additional sources of funding that we received, which is certainly helpful. We received a state allotment of $74,500 that must be spent by June 30th, 2021, and that's sort of a prevention allotment of state funding to help continue your efforts to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We certainly have been putting those funds to good use and spending that on a variety of expenses, certainly some expenses that could be related to additional school nurse hours, administering food testing, contract tracing, additional supplies and materials, and so forth. So certainly it's a helpful allotment of funding. We also received an update of the second allotment of the SR2 federal grant, $211,096. I talked about that during the budget presentation last week. So we have a plan of trying to spend that over the next couple of fiscal years. We will be getting an SR3 amount of funding now. We don't know the exact amount, but my understanding is it could be up to 2.25 times or so from the amount of either SR1 and SR2 combined or SR2. So we are expecting a good allotment of funding there, and kind of waiting to see what that amount will be, what the parameters around that spending will be. But I think it will be similar to the SR1 and SR2 in terms of spending, and we do think that will be able to be spent through fiscal year 23. So I am told by the Department of Education Financial Office that we should know the budget amount for that certainly before the end of this fiscal year. That although the application to draw to apply for those funds may not be available until the summer.
Michael, just to be clear on that one, so that the SR3 money would be available for fiscal year 22 and 23?
Correct.
Yeah. So in the other one, we in our budget presentation, we're planning on using half each year. And
Correct.
I would assume we plan on probably the same sort of allocation.
So if we were to do that, it would certainly, I think at minimum, free up an additional $260,000. So I believe that amount is going to be somewhere between $475,000 and potentially $500,000. So I'm hoping before the end of this budget process, certainly as we approach the public hearing next month, vote, that we will know the specifics of the amount. You know, they've already said their application will likely not be available.
And these funds come directly to the school, not through?
Come directly to the school, like other federally administered funds through the state, through the school. a grant application like many of our other kind of entitlement grants that we receive, administered through the Department of Education. So good news there, just way more detail, certainly good news from that fiscal year 22 and 23 standpoint. But in terms of where we stand in fiscal 21, like I said, I think we're in good standing. See, most of the payroll side of the equation is in line with what I discussed previously. There's no surprises. We have the balances in certain accounts due to some delay in the hire of some staff, and as well as just some additional funding due to leave absences and a variety of things that occurred that have led to some projected balances. So overall, I think we're in solid financial standing. I think we're certainly we'll have some needs as we approach the end of the year, and we'll be working on putting that together and presenting those needs to try to see really how best to spend some of the projected balance that we'll certainly have a need to do to assist in helping us set ourselves up for being a good financial standing in the future as well. But certainly needs will come up over the final quarter as they always do with unanticipated expenses. I'm sure will arise. So that was really the FY20 budget update.
Mike, can I have a couple quick questions?
Yes, please.
Number one, I know we bought a lot of materials for this year. Our purchasing last year for this year, was it about what we needed? Do we have, excess, or was it not enough and we have to supplement it?
So, when you say material, you refer to
PPE, masks, cleaning supplies, things like that?
So, really good question. So we were able to purchase a good amount of those with funding at the end of the year. We also were able to purchase many of those funds and seek reimbursement for that, again, through their municipal care. Still waiting for some of that, they're probably getting done, but I just checked the inventory of that, of the masks, of the gowns, and sanitizing supplies, anything certainly PPE related, and gloves, those types of PPE equipment. So we are in good standing. We are going to need to replenish. We actually put an order in this week a small order to replenish it to make sure we're good to the end of the year and potentially into next year. Somewhat. We're not seeing a need for masks. I think we have a good supply of students to sell medical masks as well as even some of the cotton masks that are available. We got some businesses donated us masks, cotton masks, N95 masks. There's a good supply of face shields. We got some donations of face shields by some businesses in town as well as what we purchased. We're good with masks and face shields. We do need to replenish things like gowns and gloves, the N95 masks, the medical masks which the nurses wear daily. Those need to be replenished ongoing. So we just put an order in that focused on those areas. And I see a need to probably do that again. And the hope is that we'll do that and set ourselves up to be in really good standing as we approach next year. But we actually have a very good supply of sanitizing, disinfecting solution that should carry us for a while. So we're in good shape in terms of where that inventory is.
I have two more questions still. One, I know last year there was a shortage of computers when we did try to buy devices at the end of the year. Have those supply issues resolved themselves so that if we do need to purchase more computers for next year, that we think we'll be okay to purchase them and not have a delay issue?
So I think they're certainly getting better. We are, believe it or not, we're still waiting for the shipment of some of the computers that were purchased in the fall, those Chromebooks that were purchased, but we do anticipate that's we actually think it's going to ship this week. It's supposed to ship March 26th. So when that large allotment, fortunately we were able to make do this year, and we need to put, deploy those and put those into use this year. But when that allotment comes in, which should happen over the next month or so, we will be in really good shape, with those budgets that will come in.
Yeah, I would say that the industry is still behind.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're keeping that in mind with our timelines and our ordering, but I think there's just an overall, there was such a demand on devices that they're still behind. The wait times are longer than they were in a typical year.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when we are buying, like, especially if we have funds that need to be used this year, that we're making sure that we're purchasing and getting those purchase orders in early enough.
Yeah.
So that we're.
Yeah, and they're allowing that, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely will be making sure that those orders get in early. But between what we know we'll get in this spring, that we're back ordered from the fall, and what we will plan to purchase through the variety of available sources that we know we'll have through potentially some capital money, potentially some general fund money that we'll need. We'll do that as early as possible.
That, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that some of those funds that need to be spent by a certain time, having the orders placed like this, that they are aware at the federal level and the state level of these back orders, and they're not going to hold us accountable because it would affect so much of what, it's not just North Reading in this position, so they are aware of that.
And then the last question, I don't know if you've given an update since we voted on the bus contract. I know I reached out because I'm annoying and I do that, but did you ever give an update on the final contract? Because I know you were talking about years 4 and 5. Did you ever give an update at the meeting to everybody about that
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Looking at my community.
The bus.
I don't remember it now.
Okay.
The bus contract was officially executed with North Suburban. They did agree to work with us when we approached the final, the end of the initial guarantee of the contract, the end of the 3 years. They're very open to working with us on that 4th and 5th year, and they would hope possible they could be more competitive and reduce the pricing. They just couldn't give us a definitive answer now, not knowing a lot of the variables that could be in play, that they could certainly reduce, guarantee a reduction of that 4th year. But as we approach that into the beginning of year 3, they agreed to enter into some conversations to see where the market is, where the fuel costs are at that time, and they'd be very interested in, if possible, negotiating lower prices for 4th and 5th year, although they can definitively tell us what that could be right now.
And you have a meeting with potential drivers? Did any of them want to
So
say
we have a transitional meeting that set up with North Suburban, with the president of the company, to discuss items like the transition, which would involve the bus drivers, who's available. Certainly, typically, current bus drivers are given the option if they want to make the change in the company. So that would occur, that process would occur. We're also in conversations with them about just the equipment and the type of bus and GPS and routing software that they and cameras that need to be installed. So all that's going to happen in the next 10 days or so. That meeting will occur. We'll start those conversations. Sure. Hopefully ensure that it's as smooth a transition as possible.
Thanks.
On the FY21 budget. Okay. So the final item on the budget update, I felt like I should include a memorandum that was sent to Michael Roberto, the town administrator, so the full committee is aware that the administration, through certainly the chair, Mr. Buckley, was certainly very interested in entertaining the possibility of adding a town meeting article at the annual town meeting that you fit, that would allow for the transfer of funds into the stabilization reserve fund for unanticipated, unbudgeted special education out of district costs, which would include tuition and transportation. As a point of background, this stabilization fund was officially approved at town meeting 2 years ago in 2019. At that time, and we also funded it the amount of $100,000. There was 2 articles during that town meeting. The currently $100,000 in the stabilization fund. And at the time, we talked about revisiting it, maybe having an article every other year, or potentially fund increase the amount of funding in the stabilization fund. So what we're seeking tonight is just to put you on notice that this is something we're interested in. We did notify the town administrator that this is something that potentially the school committee would be approving and seeking at the future date. And we would like to take this forward for official discussion at the finance planning team meeting when they review the town meeting articles that have been submitted for final approval. So to me, the amount necessary doesn't need to be determined this evening or recommended by the committee. We really want to just have those discussions with the finance planning team, see where the available sources that can come from, whether it's free cash or what happened 2 years ago. But I think even if it's a small allotment, if we can continue to try to build the capacity of this reserve fund similar to the other reserve funds within the town for unanticipated costs, I think it's a good financial effort to take that approach. So this was language that was established, that was used at town meeting 2 years ago. So with that, I'll just open up any questions.
I would just say, let's not think small like that, Michael. Let's think big. I mean, I think the goal originally was to maybe get up to, I think, 500,000 into that eventually. Is that the limit that we can put in
There
there?
is a limit. The limit is about $500,000, because it does have to be a certain percentage of each spending. About 5% or so. So it's just, we had calculated about $500,000 that would be eventually housed in the fund.
And to be clear, like, these funds are not meant to just say we need them this year. It's meant for, you know, from 1 year to the next, a couple of students move in, there's a large placement, and they need to be voted on both by the select board and the school committee, I believe, in order to use these funds, correct? So the whole idea here is we don't always have the ability to go back to town meeting to get the approval to use it. And if there was, you know, when we vote on a budget in June and then a student moves in before the school year and there's a large placement, that could be a huge burden on the budget. This would be some funds that would be available. So it's not something that we're trying to use to get from year to year. It's just something that in the really bad cases, you know, bad situations that we might run into. But I would just say this year is the year that we should absolutely fund it, because we set a very low budget last year because we were expecting, you know, a decrease in state funding, and it was level funded. So there's a lot that's flowing through to free cash this year. And so I really think that we should, you know, look to the future, and, you know, when we might have a lot of free cash opened up, I think it's a great place to do it. The town has done this with many stabilization funds, and I think we should push for us to do this as well. So I personally think it should be at least what we put in the last time, at least another $100,000 into the fund to try to get there, because, you know, every year we're not going to have that situation, but I think our free cash is about as high as it's been ever. So I think it's a great idea, great call, Michael, that you thought about that. I did not think about that, and fully support it.
That's why he gets paid to do stuff.
So I get paid nothing. That's my value, people. Rich, you're unmuted. Do you have a comment?
I mean, no, I agree. I definitely think we should do this, and you know, obviously, we'll figure out the right amount over time, but we should vote this tonight for sure.
Are we voting on this tonight, or?
I think a vote would help, just so we have before we know we officially say we have a vote before.
Okay, so we do want to vote to
approve the proposed article?
Yeah, put forth the article. So can I have a motion to put forth the article for town meeting on funding, putting money into the stabilization fund for special education, something along those lines?
So moved.
You can make it more eloquent if you'd like to.
You set such a high bar.
You can put it much more eloquent than I could, Chris, so. We have a motion.
And a second.
We have a second from Janine. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Chris?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And an aye as well. Passes by 0. And again, Michael, thank you so much for bringing that up.
No problem. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Daly, staffing?
I had a brief update, but I'm not prepared to give it at this time, so if I could just do that.
Okay. Did they not accept the offer?
Yeah, no, I left the piece of paper down. I'm not gonna go that quick.
Oh, bids and donations, none at this time. Subcommittee update, policy subcommittee met on March 16th. Update,
You got it.
you got it?
You voted on it.
There we go. Did we not have finance planning? We did not.
No, but we had fine art.
We did, so I'm sorry about that. The fine arts and the athletic subcommittee both met on March 17th. I'm sorry.
Okay, so how about we do fine arts, sir?
Sure. It was, I was there with Mr. McGowan. It was, it was mostly kind of a meeting. We talked about, ways in which some of the, ways in which, fine arts faculty members are dealing with coming back in and, the challenges they're overcoming, and also some talks about what, our larger events are going to look like towards the end of the calendar year. But most of it is still getting figured out. There weren't really decisions or notices to share, but it was still a great opportunity, as always, to hear the thoughts from our excellent faculty. Rich, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's it. I mean, we've had some also sort of preliminary discussions about future needs, but at this point, that's all very preliminary. So it's I think the most important business right now is figuring out what we're doing at the end of the year, concerts and presentations. So.
Okay, athletic subcommittee, want to give an update on that?
Dave gave a lot of information that was pretty much discussed on at the subcommittee meeting. It was nice to know that the fans were actually allowed in for that Friday volleyball game. I believe the playoffs have a cutoff date of either the 6th or the 15th of June. It was hard to hear sometimes. And I think budget-wise, we're doing pretty good. Mike, if you could just verify that.
Yeah, things are better. We can experience some savings for the short of the season, like official transportation. So certainly, revenues have to get better. And the
Are we charging the parents for coming? Are the parents paying you when they come to football games?
No.
I was going to say, pretty good move, but.
I noticed too, I needed a point to look that the dugouts are being constructed. So shout out to the little kids that have been coming and doing that. That's pretty much it.
Any other subcommittees we didn't discuss? We didn't deal. Okay. Upcoming meeting, finance planning is April 6th at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m.? Maybe.
One of those two.
Were you either there, Rich? I don't think so. Just kidding. The athletic subcommittee and fine arts are both on May 19th at 1 p.m. and then 3:30 p.m. And that's about it for that. Administrative report, Dr. Daly?
Sure, I just wanted to share an update at this time. Mr. Connolly and I became aware of an opportunity called the Community Project Funding through Representative Moulton's. We're in the 6th Congressional District. And so we did put in for this grant. We talked about technology and the need for, expanding our one-to-one program in light of all of our students K-12 having devices. So we've applied for that funding. If we do have to talk about what sources we would use if we didn't receive that funding. We talked about the cooperative work with the community, the CIPC, and our local budget. So I will keep you posted on that, but we did apply for that grant. I wanted to update it.
Okay.
The other piece too, I think I've mentioned before, but I just wanted to say again that we're rolling out the cybersecurity grant for year 2. And so that has started this week actually. our staff is going to begin doing the modules. There's up to 50% new modules, and they're going to begin those this week and continues throughout the calendar year. So they're going to be working on that. So there's, a lot to be gained from that study, and so we are happy to be recipients for year 2 of that grant.
Okay, no correspondence. Do we have a date for that select board meeting that we're supposed to attend?
We don't. There were some dates mentioned, and I don't know. I know that Ann Lindell was working on that with the select board to try to figure that out. There was some talk about April 12th, but I don't know that was officially confirmed.
Okay.
So I didn't put that on here. That would be just the joint meeting.
Yeah. To approve it's the building committee, is it also the SSBC, but is it also the one with Rich, the town facilities plan or not?
Yes, I think so.
Both of them?
Yeah, I don't know that we need to, I'm not sure about that one. I know that the select board has to approve it. I don't know that it needs both groups there.
Maybe not, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we, on the minutes, we just approved, he was taken, promote him to that.
Okay.
From us.
And, okay, future business, March 31st, we have a 3 p.m. meeting, budget workshop. Is that going to be virtual or is that going to be in the conference room? You know?
We are doing it as virtual. I think we can discuss what we're comfortable doing. We could do it right here. I mean, the conference room is somewhat tight for if everybody's there. Would not be open to the public. Similar to these meetings, we would have it remotely. I don't know, Mr. Conley, do you think this forum here would be better, or would you rather try in the conference room? Or
I mean, this might be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Right out.
You could definitely do it here. It's pretty tight in there with all of us.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we were going to do it.
Yeah, we could do it. I mean, if it's depending on who wants to be in person, some are in person and some are virtual. We could do it either. But we could do it fully virtual if that's what the committee wants. We're flexible as needed.
Mine would be more about work being virtual, convenient, because I can come right out of the meeting and join.
Sure. Yeah, 3 p.m.
But it's less about time.
I am, can you guys hear me?
You started talking and you muted yourself.
Yeah, because all of a sudden I couldn't hear any of you guys. I was just going to say, unfortunately, I'm going to have to miss that meeting. I'm going to be on an airplane for that. So I suppose theoretically I could potentially use the airplane's Wi-Fi, but I can't imagine that would work very well. But if I have any questions or any comments, I'll pass them on to Scott, and he can ignore them as he sees fit.
Rich said he agrees with me on every point.
Well, I have a current conflict right now that I guess I will try to get out of it. So I might be in Richard's camp, but.
Well, let's hope at least 3 of us show up so we can actually have the meeting. Janine and Chris, are you
I'll be there.
Okay. So, yeah, I was actually thinking maybe virtually would be easier. I don't know that there's a ton to, I don't know. It's hard because if you're going to have any paper to hand out, are you going to have paper to hand out, Michael? Or?
I mean, if it's virtual, I'll just be sharing my screen, email documents there for the meeting. I will have it as a agenda and hand out those things.
I think virtual is fine.
Yeah, I'd be fine with a virtual one because it's the middle of the afternoon. So maybe we'll plan. It'll at least be virtual for people that want to attend virtually. If people want to come in person, possibly. I'm just also thinking of like kids being home and everything, just so we feel to watch them. So.
And again, the people coming in person would just be the committee.
Correct. It would be virtual like this for the members of the public either way, sure. But the committee might be in virtual as well.
Right.
And April 15th, we have the next regular planned school committee meeting. This will be the public hearing for the budget, 6:30 p.m. And Wednesday, April 28th, we have another budget workshop if necessary.
There's a budget webinar on Friday too.
Oh yeah.
At noon time.
Do you have people registered for that or?
Call for one. Maybe not, there's about 15 people right there.
I'm registered.
Yes. Michael Gilberto has registered. Maybe he's the opportunity.
Big brother, work on it, look over it.
I'll do a reminder of that this week.
Okay. Other comments or issues to address? Hearing none others, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss. For sure. Okay, Janine?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And I as well, 5-0. Thank you, everybody.